Well, it was a big day Saturday for a couple of Ohio State Buckeyes in the quarterback and wide receiver workouts. We're going to talk about both those positional groups. Get to a little bit talk about the tight ends. It was a great day athletic testing wise for the tight ends, but is this truly the class that some folks are trying to make it out to be? Jeff Lloyd joined with Pete Smith, your latest Locked On Browns.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Joining me, head honcho over at Browns Digest, his team over there, and Pete. They put together a tremendous value and a great resource. And this time of year, the work just picks up as they just continue to pound the pavement, put out the best content they can for you Browns fans. So make sure you're following at _Pete Smith _. As I opened with, and we'll get to the quarterbacks in segment 2. We're going to talk some tight ends today too. But the wide receiver group, anybody who knows me and talking the draft for as many years as we've done this, always my favorite group. And I will say I probably came away yesterday, easiest way to say it is probably wanting more. I think everybody who looks at this, and certainly from the Browns perspective with a pick at 42, I'm not really sure the way this first round is going to break through. I think last year was like 4 in the top 15, top 16, something like that. And you just don't necessarily run and take a position. These guys got to be able to check the boxes, fill, the statistical outlook that you're looking for, the statistical production, I should say, the athletic production. The athletic testing as well. And it was really a tough day yesterday. The second group significantly better than the first group, no question. For me, one of my biggest takeaways from yesterday, and it was kind of the forgotten guy in this entire process. Obviously, this past fall, injuries in Columbus, played sparingly in 3 games. This was a guy I think everybody was excited to see how this year would go with, not playing with Garrett Wilson, with not playing with Chris Olave, and it just never really came to pass for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Then you finally get out there, and there was nothing about him, doing the 40. He jumped, I think, which was good for his size. I would say okay for his size. Did his workouts, and you just saw the smoothness, the crispness. I put it out there last night. If your offense, your team, you're looking for somebody that can give you Cooper Kupp type stuff, I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba is able to do that. And quietly, one of the most crucial things he did was get in a 3-cone yesterday. I don't know how much he's truly going to test at Ohio State's pro day, but the 3-cone basically lights up everything you need to know and makes you think that he's truly back to 100% health. And, in a class that, and I'm not saying he's going to go first in the wide receiver group, but for a class that was really looking for somebody to step up, make a statement, it was a guy who was, over the summer really thought about maybe being somebody who was going to be a big part of this class. And then just quietly, it didn't happen for him. Basically, put himself back on the map yesterday, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he'll run the 40 at Ohio State.
At this point, I wouldn't.
Even if he does, it sort of doesn't matter. The 3-cone and the shuttle is who he is. He's a guy who's going to win with quickness, body control, great change of direction, and that's what he was when he was great for Ohio State. He's going to be a big-time slot player that can just create a ton of production for you. The only other real question with him is his health. Is there any reason to believe that that's going to be a lingering issue? If it's not, then he's probably going to end up going in the late part of the first round. Maybe he gets the second round, but even that seems unlikely. There's just too many teams that need a player like that. All the things he can do. And certainly, look, I mean, if you were to look at him from the Browns perspective, he's great in a lot of – he's perfect for what they need, even if he can't sort of necessarily be a home run hitter, but he does fit all the areas that you need. The thing is, there's just a number of teams to pick in front of them that all have that same need. Like, look at a team like the Chicago Bears. They need all the things. If they trade down and get a bunch of picks, like Jaxon Smith-Njigba could easily be one of those players they add.
And well, I mean, if you want to maybe, keep it until Chicago trades out, there was the wasted trade pick. If you're the Chicago Bears right now, would you say we'd rather have the opportunity to draft Jaxon Smith-Njigba, or no, it's cool. We got Chase Claypool around here. Things always kind of look a little bit different after the fact. Pete, a couple wide receivers. And actually here, guys, I'll give you this one. So I guess it works out for Saturday, Friday night, Thursday night. I sent a message over to Pete. I'm really interested. Kayshon Boutte, the tape looks good. I'm really, really interested. Then yesterday comes and, he was about as interested as being there as any kid who shows up to Saturday at attention is. Didn't really work out for Kayshon Boutte. And, we're talking about a day 3 guy now, somewhere on day 3.
Maybe.
Very well. I mean, once we get to the off-field stuff, who knows, Pete, definitely. But Pete, maybe a couple of guys for you yesterday. Either A, caught your eye in general, B, caught your eye because they can bring something, for the Browns. Because one thing I think everybody's probably a little bit nervous and hesitant about is this free agent class without a lot of headliners. Some guys are going to make some money that may take some teams out of the realm where, oh, wow, we liked him. Oh, wow, we didn't like him at $9 million per.
Yeah, like this whole draft process, I've sort of thought that it's not impossible that the Browns would find somebody they loved at 42 and take them, or even if they trade down that they might find a receiver that they love and take them. But compared to some of the talent you've seen in this class, defensive line in particular, but even corner is just so good that I could easily see the Browns go a different direction than receiver. So, coming into this, all I heard about was, guys like Tyler Scott and, some of these guys that could potentially take the top off of defense, Jalen Hyatt. And they're fine. I mean, Tyler Scott, his 40 was not good. He came in claiming he was going to run a 4.2 something, and he ran 4.5.
Wasn't even the fastest Bearcat on the track.
Yeah. But like, if you get past those guys and you look at a guy like Marvin Mims, who does a lot of those things that people say they want somebody who can operate out of the slot, can win down the field. Marvin Mims has a better resume than Tyler Scott does. He has a better resume than a lot of these guys, and he crushed it. I mean, his agility might have been slightly better, but in terms of, his raw speed was there. He ran 4.38. His explosion was good. All those things, like, he's a guy that people are talking about going in the 3rd or 4th round. The investment's so much lower, and he might be able to give you that dynamic without the expense. Trey Palmer of Nebraska is obviously going to jump out to people. He ran a 4.33. That's what he does. That's who he is. Another guy who played predominantly out of the slot, had a great year for Nebraska after transferring out of LSU. That's another guy that could be interesting. And it's difficult to sort of really hammer down where a guy like Josh Downs is going to go from North Carolina. But his workout was fine, I guess. He's not a burner, but his workout wasn't problematic. A lot of these guys, I wish they would have done agility and they didn't. But then you go into this, and I would say Tyler Scott's in the same boat. He did not run well in the 40, but when they got into things like the gauntlet, they played much faster. I think Josh Downs played fast in the gauntlet, and some of those things you're actually seeing it happen. How fast do they go down the line, and can they attack the football? And I thought those guys did a better job with that stuff. And the guy that I probably don't think is really on the radar for the Browns, but is really interesting to me, is Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss. He's huge. He's 6'2", 220 pounds. And I love watching Lane Kiffin's offense at Ole Miss because they do all kinds of crazy crap to get guys they like the ball. And Jonathan Mingo does all kinds of stuff you'd see tight ends do. He'll line up as a wing. He does some of the stuff that Jarvis Landry used to do. Line up as a wing and go wham block or lead block or do some of those things, and then go out and catch passes. And he also stretched the field quite a bit. And, I think the Browns are probably more inclined to get somebody who's going to, be a little quicker, be able to do things like whip routes and in and out, those type of things. But if they don't, and they like a guy who can run a good square in, or a guy who's going to win on a slant, who can also be sort of a matchup problem if they're playing teams with like small corners or slow safeties, Mingo gives you sort of another guy who can create potential problems.
Also, where you brought up Mango, and I've seen this, from you come up a little bit here is, maybe, when you're going to get into games later in the year where, it might not truly be that the weather is factor as much as the temperature, maybe big slap with some yak ability isn't the worst option necessarily. So, I'm not saying, look, this wide receiver class is, dead. It's definitely failing in comparison to some of the classes in the past. This is going to happen. It's ebbs and flows. What I'm saying? You're just not going to plug and play these guys out every single year. And of course, obviously for most, all eyes will be on Marvin Harrison Jr. Next year, and we'll see the way the rest of that class takes shape. I'm going to get some of the quarterback play yesterday. Look, I don't want to take anything away from Anthony Richardson and the athletic exploits yesterday. But when it actually came to playing the quarterback position yesterday and simulating drills, yeah, there's probably one quarterback to talk about, and we'll get to that here on your latest Locked On Browns. Jeff Lloyd, joined by Sports Illustrated's Pete Smith. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, then you gotta try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. And look, we're not that far away from spring, summer, bathing suit season, so you got to do all you can to keep yourself in the best of shape. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they are all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to the nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in, grab a 13-bar box with hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro, and you can thank me later. Pete, we continue on here. And look, Anthony Richardson obviously breaking every single quarterback record that ever existed. Running the 140, which turned out to be a 4.43. Everything excellent. There are certainly things with Anthony Richardson that give you pause and hesitation, and we've gone through these types of scenarios with quarterbacks in the past. Mitch Trubisky, Carson Wentz, limited playing time on the field. Daniel Jeremiah going over and over about how he truly needs, a redshirt year in the NFL. Yes, all the talent is there, but physically putting it together and turning into a top quarterback in the league, it takes time. There's no question about that. And sometimes with the NFL and NFL franchises, the biggest problem the franchises have is they can't maybe necessarily invest time. There are some teams that do have that opportunity this year. But where I'm more going with this is CJ Stroud, while everybody was kind of, basically drooling at, the sight of Anthony Richardson, and probably understandably so, CJ Stroud was out there just knocking down throw after throw. And now here is a guy who, has played with Garrett Wilson, has played with Chris Olave, has played with Jaxon Smith-Njigba, has played with Marvin Harrison. Yes, all great individual talents, but you can't just say, Stroud isn't good because of them. You can't overrate him because he's played with them. And yesterday, throwing to a cast of guys that he barely even, was on a first name basis with, just everything looked just smooth and concise.
Yeah, CJ Stroud would crush everyone in 7-on-7 if that was just the league. If it was just a 7-on-7 league, CJ Stroud would beat everybody. He's a project in the sense that he has so much ability as a passer, but he's got to get better on the move. He's got to get better at, it always felt like he was having to physically shift like a manual transmission to run when he was at Ohio State. And then you saw the Georgia game, which is one of the great, if not the greatest quarterback performance I've ever seen from a college quarterback in the semifinal game. When you saw the whole package and what he can be, and what he could be was unbeatable. He made Georgia's defense look irrelevant in that game. So he's a phenomenal talent, but and this is not limited to Stroud, I think this is with all these guys, you have to have a real plan. You can't just throw them out there and then change coaches every year and think it's going to work out. And I think that becomes maybe not as important as it is for Richardson. I think Richardson, you have to be in a situation where it's like the Bills were with Josh Allen or the Ravens were with Lamar Jackson, where you're saying you're going to get all 5 years or 4 years or whatever are going to be with this coaching staff. Nothing's going to change. And we're going to have a plan and we're going to stick with it. And that's why those guys that's a huge part of why those guys were successful. That's beyond the hard work and all that. I don't get the sense that Anthony Richardson's not going to be a guy who puts in all the effort, but I do think the team that drafts him can easily fail him. So what I worry about is looking at the teams that are potentially up at the top. Maybe Houston might be okay with that just because they signed DeMeco Ryans to a 15-year contract seemingly, and he's going to be there forever. Maybe Detroit might be a good spot. And I should say for Richardson or really any of these quarterbacks, I just look at who's going to be stable for these guys, because obviously we've seen it with Cleveland. You go back to the draft class where they took Baker Mayfield. I will contend forever that Josh Allen would have failed miserably here, first under Hugh Jackson, then it was just a joke how you do that versus Sean McDermott versus John Harbaugh, and just the consistency and keeping the same thing going and going and going. What I found funny about this quarterback workouts was like Will Levis from Kentucky comes in and goes, "Yeah, I've got a cannon. I'm going to show it off. Got the strongest arm. He's the fourth best arm in his group." CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and freaking Stetson Bennett were all throwing. And granted, now the one thing I will caveat with Stetson Bennett is Stetson Bennett is putting his whole body into every throw versus Will Levis, who's a little bit of an easier thrower. But CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson are just as good, if not better, arms than Will Levis. And I think that's as much as Will Levis, like that was his showcase, I think it may have hurt him a little bit. It just shows that he's not so special that he's in that group. And I think it really helps Anthony Richardson and certainly Stroud that they could go throw for throw and it was never an issue.
Well, that's the part that's surprising, because it's like you play in the SEC, you kind of got to know a little bit about Anthony Richardson. If you're a top quarterback in the country, you should know a little bit about CJ Stroud. So basically you went in there like, I'm Nuclear Lush, and there were other guys who were more promising. I'm not sure where the Browns' interest truly lies in a quarterback in this class. Mentioning of them, some meetings, speaking to the young quarterbacks. Do you see something that maybe fits as a type of Deshaun Watson understudy, or somebody who maybe Pete looks like, hey, we've seen it with Baker, we've seen it with Jacoby. We'll hope to see it when we saw the second half in Washington with Deshaun. Is there somebody that you see that says, hey, he might work with Coach Stefanski?
Sure. Now, this is under the caveat that they are undrafted. I do not see a scenario where the Browns draft.
Just keep Kellen Mond if that's the case, because it's the O-line. Look, if it ain't Deshaun, you're screwed anyway.
Because unless they change the roster rules and they make it so that third quarterback doesn't count. If they do, great, then you can do it. But if not, then the two guys I look at are DTR from UCLA, but I think he's going to get drafted. The one I think may not get drafted is Malik Cunningham, who I love. I love Malik Cunningham because I don't need him to throw a single pass. He can run. He can just run. He's so good at just running the football. And then it's so easy. It becomes like it was with Josh Dobbs in a sense where things become so open that he's going to make some throws. And you watch the workouts when I watch the Senior Bowl stuff and I watch him. Malik Cunningham's not bad. He's just inconsistent, but he's small relatively. He's like Michael. He's shorter and 20 pounds lighter than Michael Vick was, which is a problem, but he is just electric. And if you're down to your third string quarterback, what are you really going to do? And at that point, you can run all kinds of crazy crap that you would already be running with Deshaun Watson and Kellen Mond theoretically. And all the other part of that is if he's your scout team quarterback, Malik Cunningham or DTR, if that's the case, are going to get you ready for teams that can run around and throw the ball. Like you play so many of these guys, and we've still got to see what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson if he stays with Baltimore or goes somewhere else. But they play enough of these guys throughout the year that guys of that speed are going to get you ready to really pass rush guys like Justin Herbert, like Josh Allen. And obviously they're a little bit different because they're so much bigger, but just being able to rally, being able to make sure you get your proper rush lanes to contain guys, even Joe Burrow, these guys are athletic. They can create with their legs. So a guy like Malik Cunningham can help you in a lot of ways if he goes undrafted. Even Max Duggan, really, even though he can't throw for anything, but he ran really fast.
Well, if he can run, low mid 4.5s, yeah, I think we're, more than okay with that. So the quarterback class, look, and it feels weird, obviously, because, you still haven't obviously gotten the opportunity, for Bryce Young to have his workout. Certainly going to make for a very, very interesting top 10 or so, the weeks leading up to it, certainly draft night, as these teams try to get themselves in the position to, basically go get their guy. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every day, whether it's on your favorite podcast platform. Always free, always available here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, notifications on. And of course, if you got Roku, go ahead and search Locked On Cleveland Sports. You will find Locked On Browns. You'll find the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Locked On Guards, Locked On Cavs. And we are going to get to some thoughts from the tight end class. Extremely, extremely impressive workouts yesterday. Lots of talk, maybe 3 to 4 tight ends in the first round. Let's, basically see if, that dog will hunt here. And we'll get to that here in the final segment. Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, thanks for being around. So the tight end group went to work yesterday. And Pete, I think the first thing for me that truly blew my mind was just the overall raw athleticism of these guys, consistently under 4.7, all these guys big in size. Certainly, Washington from Georgia, what exactly can he contribute? There are so many tight ends from the past who were such great blockers to begin with. And as they got to the NFL, their game evolved and, became more involved, as pass catchers. Dalton Kincaid, this is one that a lot of people love. He did, relatively nothing yesterday. So you haven't seen that part yet. For the Browns, I don't know if this is truly something they are in on, another tight end. You already have Harrison Bryant. You have David Njoku. You've got 5 to 6 weeks to maybe put something together. And there's been possible talks of the Browns interested in another veteran tight end. But sometimes, a class may dictate your board if it is good enough. But Pete, it's great that they all tested well. Are there truly, this 3, 4 first round talents at the tight end position?
Probably not, but that's the thinking on tight end has changed so much. And the reason I say no is because traditionally, even superstar tight ends tend to go in the second round. Gronkowski, second round. These are some of the best of the best of the best tight ends don't get picked in the first round. So, and
some of the ones that have, they either haven't developed yet, or it took them a while, i.e. David Njoku. And then the caveat to that would be obviously, Pitts from Florida and now an Atlanta Falcon.
So if, 4 actually go, and I could see it, Kincaid could go very high. I could easily see Washington end up on the Bengals. Then that's fine. I mean, it pushes other things down. But
it would be pretty juicy, though, if the Bengals had to draft a tight end to cover up for the fact they can never get the tackle position right.
Well, that would be one good reason, but they also can't help themselves. As a Georgia player who happens to play tight end, it fits all the things the Bengals just can't resist. So, there are no doubt talent, but who's the guy you sit there and you go, I'm going to plug this guy in, he's going to be great immediately. I don't know if you're sitting there going, that guy is going to suddenly take over and be a big part of my offense year one. And that's not a problem. Obviously the Browns are happy with where David Njoku is, but that is sort of another reason why some of these guys can sort of slip and fall. But if you're asking, who fits with what the Browns could like, a lot depends on what the Browns really want in another tight end. Because this tight end class has a lot of different shapes and sizes. There are some true inline guys. Darnell Washington is like the prototype in that. But, even Musgrave from Oregon State, I was a little surprised at how good he was. I mean, he's an alpine skier and all this, but he was freaky. But are you going to get a true full service guy out of these? Meanwhile, you take the kid out of Old Dominion, freaky tester and all this. It's hard to know what he really is going to be at the next level. Maybe he evolves into that. But even a guy like Brenton Strange tested really well, but he's sort of an F. He's, shorter than you'd like, which is the thing with Sean Laporta. That's going to be a challenge for him. Sean Laporta is shorter than you'd like. You say 6'3" is not short. Well, that can be a little bit of a problem when you're going against a 6'5", 6'6" D end with long arms who can get in your body real quick, that it may be tough to be a true inline blocker. So if you're okay with getting more guys who play out in space and sort of growing them into a tight end, which is something the Browns have done, there's a lot of guys in that camp. But it really comes down to, what do the Browns want? If they're content to add another F, there are a ton of those guys. Brenton Strange, I mentioned, from Penn State. Of course, the Penn State guy, freaky. Great athletes all the time. Not a whole lot of not as much winning as you'd think. There are players who fit in that role, and you're sitting there going, yeah, I would love this guy on my team. But I have a hard time seeing the Browns not either get the guy they want in free agency and then come back. Maybe they come back and they're just so blown away, they go, we have to take this guy. But it feels to me like they're either going to hit it there or they're not. Now, the thing with the draft and with the Browns, they tend to go where the strength of the draft is. They're going to take the best players available. So if a tight end's sitting there and is the opportunities there to grab them, they're going to go ahead and do it. But so much depends on where this offense is going. And, with the addition of Bill Musgrave and some of the things I think they're going to do, I'd recommend anyone to go back and watch that Cal offense from last year. I get it. They were terrible. They have no talent, except the one receiver is pretty interesting. Watch the games, though. Their quarterback is constantly prepared. He's got a whole lot of options. They create space for guys. They get guys open. They just weren't very good. If that's what the Browns are going to be, do they really want another tight end? I know the Browns love to be able to sort of get wide and get tight and big all in the same game. That's sort of an interesting, dynamic to be able to play with teams to make teams that are comfortable being big play small, or play teams that love to play small play bigger. That is challenging for them. So they have a lot of options.
We're going to get to one question more here with Pete. And, we have not started a shirt and tie request for guests on Locked On Browns. Pete just felt to wear his Sunday best. It's just the way it goes.
I had to class this place up. You guys are all sloppy.
Yeah. Can't truly argue with that one. Pete, you and I both are of the belief the Browns are going to find some way to add a veteran safety to this room. Friday evening, I would say two, probably, if you're going to just go, statistical output and careers, accomplishment-wise in college, Jamie Robinson, Chris Smith had not the greatest workouts, probably putting both of these guys, probably after pick 100, somewhere in the early day 3 range. In this scenario where I don't think anybody thought either one was going to blow up the gym as far as test numbers, does this really hurt either one? And if you're a team, hey, Cleveland Browns, for example, who wants to get another safety in here, you got a chance to get a pretty solid, accomplished player who may be a little bit limited athletically, but the proof is in the pudding as far as the tape concerned, in the 4th round. Does it really affect either of these two guys in the long run?
If you're just going off production, they both have question marks. I think Jamie Robinson is fine. And again, the one thing I wanted to see Jamie Robinson test is the one thing he didn't do. I thought he'd crush agility. I thought that would have been his thing, where he'd be like, look, man, I couldn't jump very high. I couldn't run very fast, but man, look at these agility.
But isn't there something to be said of, after doing all of that, then going to go do agility drills afterwards? It seems to be the last thing they do.
It is, but some of these guys crush it, and that becomes your thing. But I think that's something that Jamie Robbins is going to be like, this is my calling card. I'm going to be a competitive SOB, and I'm quick. And you may not love me as a safety, but you may love me as a slot guy. So what you're basically asking is, do any of these safeties really get the David Bell treatment? Maybe. As I said before, I'm not super high on the safety class in general, and the position group I came out of and went, okay, the Browns have to take one is corner. I'm more interested in hitting another corner. Yes.
Sure. Yes.
Like if they want to mess around and let that kid from Maryland sit there at 42, I'll take him. I will take that kid, Deonte Banks, right now, and just put 4 corners on the field and go, do something about it. But I'm wondering what's going to happen. Are we going to see some of these guys get drafted corners and converted? Are we just going to see teams just lean into this corner class and say, screw it, and we'll just protect our safety as much as possible? I'm not sure. But to your question, yeah, I think you could see that happen. But a lot of that's going to come down to value. Because what I thought about in watching sort of these receivers test is my thought was, I wonder where David Bell would go in this class. I think he might go a little higher than when the Browns got him last year, for better or worse. So maybe there's a scenario where guys fall to a point, the Browns are like, we can't help ourselves. We have to take this guy. He's just too good. We understand. And then the other part of that is, it feels like an excuse. And I think it is, to basically go, well, maybe the Browns or any of these other NFL teams will come back and say they're faster than this because they have the technology to check on that. Cooper Kupp famously, the Rams came out of the workout and said, no, he's faster than that. And they took him and it worked. So maybe there's an element of that. Hard to say, but maybe the Browns are, particularly at free safety, more interested in wisdom than necessarily athletic ability, but who knows? I mean, they've at least raised the possibility of putting Grant Delpit back there.
Certainly. And for me, I'm not sure if that's the route I want to go. You've had him put so much work and time, and, as both seasons, 21 and 22, closed out, this was a guy you were talking extremely promising about. But, it all makes for me seen. And of course, new sheriff in town, so to speak, for the defense. Got to the wide receiver group. Overall, this class, what's the old phrase? It just ain't it, and just ain't it. It's just what happens sometimes. It's just kind of the way it goes. Quarterback class, Browns may not be in it high. Certainly going to be a lot of activity in regards to that tight end group, and a couple of safeties. Been around college football for a long time. May not be athletic stars, but you're getting smart, functional, intelligent football players. Appreciate Pete Smith from Browns Digest, being along for the ride here. Make sure you're following @ Pete Smith _ as well. All the work over there, Pete and the team putting out, great content day in, day out, week in, week out. Myself, Jeff Lloyd @ Jeff _LJ _Lloyd, the show @ Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. Whether it is on your favorite podcast app, always available, always free here on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed, notifications on, so when new content drops, you guys are there to absorb it. And if you've got Roku, go ahead, fire it up. You will search for Locked On Cleveland Sports. You will find the Locked On Browns podcast, Locked On Guardians, Locked On Cavs, and the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show as well. All that being said, this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB. Oh, let's go Browns.